When the bell struck in 2019 on December 31st and we introduced 2020, did you think that one of the most popular words that you would use in 2020 would be this word? Zoom. It has changed our reality because in many ways 2020 has become a virtual year. But when it comes to our virtual presence, it's important to ask, how do we improve our virtual body language? So many of us are spending hours and hours on Zoom meetings or whatever platform you're using day after day. And I think it's important because we forget the critical importance of our body language. Today, I want to look at 7 areas to focus on so that our body language should match the level of our confidence and presence when it comes to our virtual reality. Number 1, it's really important to assess what is our pre-call energy check. What I mean by that is before we get on our video conference call, what's the energy that we are going into this call with? You know, it's something we would do naturally, perhaps if we were going into a meeting as well. Especially now that we're at home. You know, sometimes we're moving from our bedroom or from the kitchen into the living room, and then all of a sudden we're on the Zoom call. And it's really important for us to really assess, is this the energy I need for this call? Because sometimes if we're lazing around in the kitchen and we just made a cup of coffee and we're kind of yawning, and then we walk up and we go to the computer and we turn it on, we're there for our call, maybe that's not the energy we need to be bringing. What's really important is that we spend a few moments and we think about, what's this call I'm about to have? What's the goals of this call? How do I want to appear in this call? What energy am I bringing into it? And then make any adjustments perhaps that we need to so that we're showing up as we want to. Point number 2 is our posture. You know, our posture impacts everything. It impacts the quality of our voice. It impacts our energy. It impacts how others see us. I remember I was on a phone call a few months ago with a client. It was a coaching call. And I noticed that their energy was just really low and something was going on. And so I asked, I said, Tom, where are you? And he said, well, I'm lying in bed. And I said, oh. I said, do you mind just kind of sitting up or finding a chair? And he said, okay. And so he found a chair and all of a sudden the energy changed. It's the same as well when it comes to our video conferencing. You know, I think there's a wonderful benefit when it comes to these Zoom calls. One of the things that I've heard from clients is it's given us a little insight into the person's reality. We've begun to see a little bit of their home and we're fascinated. So it's a little bit casual. However, we also don't want it to be so casual that it impacts the quality of our energy or our voice. And so what we want to look for is that our posture is engaged. Because if we're slouching over a chair, that's going to impact our engagement. It's going to impact how we're showing up. And so it's important throughout the call, just like we would in a real-time meeting, to assess, where are we at with our posture? You know, there's an exercise that I've talked about time and time again. It's something that I created called the 7-second reset. In fact, you can find more about it if you go to www.7secondreset.com. And basically, it's a simple exercise to check in with yourself and make any adjustments in the moment. What's the 7 seconds refer to? Second, number 1, put your feet on the ground, grounding your feet, being physical in your feet helps us really become aware of the present moment. Seconds 2, 3, and 4 is breathing in, and as we breathe in, we begin to assess, where are we at with our body? What's happening? Where is tension, perhaps? And seconds 5, 6, and 7 is breathing out, and in that breathing out, we make an adjustment. We become more engaged, if possible. So point number 2 is mind your posture, because it will impact how you show up and certainly impact how others are perceiving you. Number 3 is, that's right, the smile. Some things don't change. Whether you're in person or virtual, smiling is critical. Do you know why? Because when we see a smile, we can't help but smile back. It's a wonderful part of how we're made. Emotions are contagious, and so when we see a smile, we want to smile back. Those mirror neurons are firing, and it creates a little bit of happiness. And so be prepared when you first come online. Don't let the first thing that people see is this distracted person, like, oh, where's my sound coming from? Where's my camera? And really, can you really just be ready with a smile and are ready to be there, to be present, and to greet others? It makes such a huge impact. Number 4 is eye contact. Now, this is really actually quite difficult when it comes to virtual calls and video conference calls, because sometimes our cam is at a different level from where our eyes are. And you know, there is something disorienting about when you watch a screen and a person's talking to you, but their eye contact is really at somewhere else. And it just doesn't make the connection. We have trouble connecting. And so what I would just say, it's play around with the level of where your cam is. Make sure that you are speaking right into the cam, because when you do, other people see that as making eye contact with them. Because if your cam is over here and you're talking there and what they're seeing is the side of your head, it's very difficult to have a powerful conversation or important conversation in that context. Also, there's a little bit of video delay sometimes, a lapse in the video coming through and the talking, and that as well can create a disconnect. So we have to be a little forgiving when it comes to video conferences and be aware that might happen, but we must do everything in our power to make sure that the eye contact is really good and that we're making eye contact with the people that we're talking to, especially in important conversations when we really want to emphasize that we're engaged with that person. Point number 5 is our gestures. That's right. You know, gestures are critically important overall in any form of communication. We know that people who use more conversational gestures are easier to listen to and more receptive. People are more receptive to them. And so therefore, it's very important in a virtual setting that we use gestures as well. However, we also need to become aware that our gestures have limits, and so that we are having this intimate conversation on the video screen. And so if our gestures are all over the place and our arms are out of the frame, that can be incredibly distracting. So what we've got to do is try and make sure that our gestures are consistent with what we are seeing on the screen. And so that we're using the fullness of the gestures, but also keeping our gestures into a presentation box where the cam can also see us. That will improve people's engagement with us, and it will also make us much more engaging to them. Number 6 is active listening. You know, if you've ever been in a conference call without a video, we all know that at times people are just not listening to us. We pick it up. We know that they're doing other things. We know they're distracted. Well, sometimes on video as well, people can be pretty blatant. You know, sometimes when people are not listening, but rather they are working on something else, they're typing away, they're doing an email, and their eyes are kind of back and forth, making sure that it seems that they're engaged, but they're really not. So it's really important, and it's a part of respect, to respect another person enough to give them your full attention. And so how we know that is through some great body language, even virtually, that shows us that you are connected. That when a person is making an important point, perhaps we move a little bit closer. That we are nodding when in agreement or shaking our head whenever we disagree with a person. That we are making some sounds like uh-huh or whatever, just to show that we're following along, just as you would in a normal conversation. The question is, when a person sees us, they should be able to say, that person is giving me their 100% attention and they're engaged. And finally, it comes to our clothing. Yes, clothing becomes incredibly important. Now, I mentioned before that, you know, this environment has become a little more casual. I remember I had a Zoom call in March of 2020, just as the COVID crisis was starting, and people were still wearing the same formal clothes as they would as when they went into work. And then all of a sudden, about 3 or 4 months later, it became a little more conversational and relaxed. And that's a good thing. However, it is really important to realize that our clothing also impacts our energy and how we show up. So if we're just going to wear sweatpants and a t-shirt, it's so casual as well that that can really impact if in a presentation that we are looking to feel empowered, to feel emboldened, and to feel confident. Clothing impacts the level of our confidence. And so I would just say, choose your clothing well. If you have a Zoom call that's incredibly important, if you want to show up with confidence and in control, then wear clothing that helps you feel that way. Don't go over the top. Don't wear a suit and tie, but wear something, some form of clothing that really makes that confidence. So point number 7 is let your clothing reflect the mood that you want to show up in. So there we have it. 7 ways that you can dramatically improve your body language in a virtual setting. You know, virtual calls, Zoom calls, etc., they're here to stay. It doesn't matter if we begin meeting in person again pretty soon. This is going to be part of our reality, and it's incredibly important for us to be incredibly deliberate when it comes to our body language on virtual calls. If you found this video helpful, I invite you to subscribe, press the bell. You'll be reminded when a new video comes out. And also to look at the next video, which looks at how to read people's emotions through their body language.